Good morning, Agape class. This is Neil Dunnavant, and I want to say before I begin my talk that I've really enjoyed being with this class over the years. I don't know how many times I've spoken to the Agape class in my 18 years as pastor, but it's been a great privilege, and I've learned a lot in preparing these classes too, and so we're getting down to, I think I'm going to speak again in August. So this is the 4th of July weekend, and we think of patriotism and national pride, and I want to share some thoughts I have about this very important subject. And I think what we have is we have a great contrast between Christianity, or being followers of Christ, which is truly a world religion. It transcends national pride, national interests, but at the same time, we live in the real world where we are broken into nations, and it really works best for all people, for all God's people and all God's creatures, to live in these nations and to be proud of the nation that we live in, to be patriotic, to be loyal to that nation, and to try to make that nation the very best that we can. And that's just the way life is, and that's the way it works best. You take something even like the European Union, which is a noble effort. There's a lot of good things that have come from it. There are open borders between the European countries. But at the same time, it works best if the French are proud of being French and the Italians Italian, and that they maintain their own cultures, their own sense of pride and patriotism, and some friendly competition, as well as the rise of sometimes nationalism and things like Brexit, where the Brits wanted to pull out for various reasons. Even in Great Britain, you have the Scots who want to be their own independent nation. It seems to be something very deeply embedded within us that we are tribal and that we like to be in smaller groups and not think of ourselves as world citizens or as creatures of God who made all of heaven and earth, but something that's smaller and more tangible. And that is, I think, just inescapably human. That's the way it is. Now, I will readily agree that when it comes to the vision that Jesus had for the kingdom of heaven, it truly transcends nations, tribes, any sense of patriotism, and so forth. And I think Paul had the same vision. There will be no Greek nor Jew, male nor female, for we are all one in Christ Jesus. And that's a noble, grand vision, and I think it's very true to the Bible, and even the peaceable kingdom, where the lion will lie down with the lamb. But we're not there yet, and that is something that we await in God's own time. And even Jesus, being fully human, as well as, of course, fully God, had his own tribal views. He talked about the Sadducees and the Pharisees, sometimes despairingly, the Samaritans, and even sometimes there was a tone about women that showed that he saw himself as a Jewish man and was separate from women, Samaritans, Gentiles, and so forth. I have been greatly influenced by a book I read perhaps a year ago, and it's a book called Americans No More, The Death of Citizenship by Georgie Ann Geyer. I'm going to see if I can show this to you. I think it's going to show up backwards, of course. But anyway, it's a really interesting book, and it's called Americans No More, The Death of Citizenships by Georgie Ann Geyer, Geyer. It was actually published quite a while ago in 1996 when Georgie Ann, who was a celebrated journalist, wrote this book when she was probably about my age, so maybe some of these things come to us when we get to be in our 60s. But I think essentially as probably a liberal reporter, she began to see the breakdown of patriotism and citizenship and realized that it's very, very important to the health of our nation. And that sometimes, I think on the liberal side, we have a tendency to focus too much on all of the bad things going on in American society and not enough about the good, and maybe dream that the grass is always greener on the other side and wish that we lived in Canada or Sweden or somewhere like that. And that really, really erodes the sense of patriotism that we actually need to be a healthy nation, and even to that extent a Christian or a religious nation. And to some extent, we have lost our sense of the common good, and that not just that we are world citizens, that we are all in this together as creatures of God, but the sense of being Americans, and that we should look after all Americans and be behaving ourselves in a way that will benefit all of us as Americans, and see ourselves together as Americans rather than so divided as we are now. Very, very interesting book. It helped me see things differently, and I think in a way that's been helpful to me. The Olympics coming up, a great example of appropriate national pride. We naturally root for the Americans. We admire the other athletes who may win the gold medals, but we are also very happy when the Americans take the gold, or if we actually achieve the most gold medals of all the nations competing in the Olympics. And I think that's a good thing. That's something that we should be proud of. We see that our sports programs are excellent, and we should be proud of the fact that we have excellent coaches, excellent facilities, excellent programs to create these amazing athletes who can compete on the world stage, sometimes set world records, and be the best in the world. In all of my years here at First Presbyterian, there has been an issue, sometimes a controversy, sometimes just a discussion about the flag, the American flag in the sanctuary. So I want to say just a little bit about that because I think it fits into this topic. And really it focuses on having the flag inside the sanctuary, not on our campus. We have American flags. There are some out in the front, in the front entry of the sanctuary. There's, I think, a flag over in the Life Center, and perhaps there's some American flags in other places. But I think it goes back to the days of Joe Mullen, who wrote a paper on it, who was suggesting that when we're in the sanctuary, we are reflecting the vision of Jesus that transcends all nations and times, and that perhaps it's inappropriate for us to have an American flag in a sanctuary because we're worshiping God, who is the God of all people, and really the God of the entire universe, perhaps of peoples that we don't even know about on other planets and so forth. So I can see that point of view. Interestingly, our Jewish sisters and brothers who are at the Temple Emmanuel, they have an American flag and an Israeli flag in their sanctuary, and they tend to be even more liberal, I think, generally, than First Presbyterian members, as far as at least Democrat-Republican type voting. And yet they feel that's important, that they're American Jews. They worship the God of Israel, but also the God of the universe, and yet they're also proud to be Americans, and they also support Israel as the Jewish nation. And so I personally wouldn't have any problem with the American flag being inside the sanctuary, because I do think that we can express our Christian values and honor God as the God of the universe, but as well as expressing our Christian values for citizenship. And I think that could be inspiring for a lot of people. So I guess I'm sounding a little wishy-washy, but I personally, it's not my call to make on this, but I certainly can see both sides of it, and maybe at some point we may make a change on that. I don't know. Okay, so the other thing that's interested me over the years is I read a paper a long time ago that John F. Kennedy had written about the connection between physical fitness and patriotism. And you all know that I'm real interested in physical fitness. And that's something that inspires me, because I think if I'm going to be a good citizen and be able to protect our nation in a crisis or to be at my best, I not only need to have a strong mind, but I need to have the strongest body that I can muster up. At my age, of course, I have my limitations, and I know that many of you are doing the best you can, but we still have our limitations when we get to a certain age. Our knees go out, our hips go out, or so forth, and we can only do the best we can. But the basic idea is that while we can be fit and while our bodies are holding up for us, hey, let's try to be as fit as we can, and that is a form of patriotism, because we want to be ready to serve our nation the best we can. Another issue that seems to be quite controversial is, to what extent are we willing to talk about the sins of our nation? And right now it seems there's a big controversy over, how much do we talk about the role of slavery and racism in the formation of our nation? How much should we talk about the expulsion of the Native Americans and what happened to the Native Americans? My personal view is that we should always be confessional and proud. So I think there's always room for both. We have achieved great things, but let's don't hide the things that we have done that have been sinful, that have been bad, and let's keep working on the things that we still need to improve, whether it be divisiveness, a lack of a common good, continued issues around racism or racial prejudices or ethnic and cultural prejudices, not sharing our resources as generously as we could for those who can't seem to take care of themselves or get ahead, and all of those kinds of things. So those are all my general thoughts. I think there's room to be honest about the things that have gone wrong, the things that have been even shameful in our nation's history, but also to work hard to be a great nation and to be proud and to put our flag out and to be rejoiceful when our team wins the Olympic gold, and work toward the United States being continuing to improve and to flourish and to prosper. So I think in summary, what I would say is that we can use our Christian values to enhance our nation. Honesty, truthfulness, humility, hard work, environmental issues, caring for our earth, the hope of prosperity for all, or at least or more prosperity for more, if that's more realistic. At the same time, we admit that we are not perfect, but we appreciate greatly the benefits we have. And even sometimes when we travel to other countries and enjoy those cultures and those different foods and hearing those different languages and seeing their beautiful museums and mountains and coastlines, we have this thing inside us that makes us glad and happy when we touch back into the United States and we are home and we go through customs and the customs agent says, "Welcome home." There's something really, really good about that too. And at the same time, in God's own time, we know that God's long-term plan is that we are not divided into nations or languages or cultures, and that there will be no more wars and fighting and tribalism and us against them, but we will all be one and all live together in peace. And we don't know when that will be and when it will happen, but we know that that is God's plan. I wish you all well for 4th of July. Happy 4th of July. God's blessings to you all.